You know, there's a lot being said today about social commentary in the arts and in comic books specifically. Is it too heavy handed at times? Does it get in the way of telling a good story? Or is that heavy handed intrusion necessary to instill some sort of social change in the world? Today I'm going to answer those questions once and for all, definitively. And what better venue to do so than Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, Volume 3. I have some criticisms of this book. I want to make sure my criticisms are pointed, that they're on the level. That's why I put these handy bookmarks here, so I can try and drill down as much as possible as I try and tear down these sacred cows. Okay, first off, what did I like about the book? Before I start criticizing it, I'll talk about what I liked about it, because it wasn't all bad news. It wasn't all bad news. I did like some stuff. I like how it reintroduces some stakes to the character. The two previous volumes, it sort of evolves Swamp Thing into this kind of demigod creature. But in this one, he runs afoul of this old, decrepit hobo who's sort of the living embodiment of nuclear catastrophe, and he puts his nuclear touch on old Swamp Thing and makes him collapse. And I didn't know that I was missing the stakes until it was reintroduced. And once he did, I was like, yeah, it's good that he did that. It's necessary to show your character, has some vulnerabilities that he can still be gotten to. Another thing that story does is it sort of furthers this sort of evolution into a demigod type figure, because after Swamp Thing is given a wallop, he finds out that he can in fact regrow his body. He can grow himself a new body, and even travel across different parts of the planet. In doing so, he can project himself down into the planet Earth, into the green, and sort of travel somewhere else. And it's a cool sort of it works. It doesn't feel forced. It feels well earned. It feels like a natural evolution of the character. While it does sort of further him as a sort of demigod type creature, it feels very natural, and it's a way of evolving the character without sort of eroding what came before. I love this. What a cute picture of the seedling Swamp Thing here. That's adorable. So what else? What else did I like? I liked this story here. It's a callback to a previous issue where Swamp Thing had gone to a town overrun by vampires, and he broke the dam, and the running water killed all the vampires. So he thought, because some of them are still alive, and they've sort of evolved into these sea monkey type creatures. And I think that was a good way of sort of hearkening back to a previous issue without sort of just being repetitive. It's not just, oh, the bad guys have shown up again. It takes it into a new direction, sort of puts it in a new context. And I think that's the way to do it. Harken back to the old stuff while doing something new and cool. And that's what I like. Okay, what did I not like? What did I not like about this? What stuck in my craw? So one thing is, after reading Batman Year One, which is a near perfect comic book, it had me sort of re-examining the relationship between words and the pictures in a graphic novel. And I don't think Alan Moore always succeeds in striking that balance. A good comic book, the words and the images should be in almost a perfect marriage. One doesn't step on the other. One isn't pulling the weight for the other. It should be a delicate balance. One serves the other. And I think sometimes Alan Moore's writing just plumb gets in the way at times. For one, it doesn't always need to be this verbose. Like, I understand that's part of the appeal. The appeal of Alan Moore is he's a learned English gentleman, his flowery prose, but it doesn't always need to be like that, especially in a visual medium. He's got 4 paragraphs here. When, maybe sometimes just 2 sentences would do the work. So reading this here, he watches the sheets of newsprint flap like huge moths crippled by their own weight, hopping clumsily amongst the black trees. Their pages are full of obsolete tragedies and discarded faces, all the carefully logged hysteria of a world he no longer belongs to. That's all well and good, but sometimes I think he needs to pull back on the throttle a little bit. Like so for instance, the visuals should be doing the work of all these similes and allusions here. Like the newsprint flaps like huge moths. It should be the visuals that are sort of conveying that. The writing just sort of slows down and sort of gets in the way. Really all you need is, so it's sort of this cool gimmick throughout. I like this, where it's sort of, there's different bits of newspaper floating about, and they have headlines about different nuclear catastrophes like 3 Mile Island and various government cover-up shenanigans. Really all you needed was the info about how those newspapers were scattered about. It says some news boys, they got tired of delivering papers, so they just said fuck it and dumped their newspapers. Really all you needed was that, like, a bit of information, and then that combined with the visuals should do all the work of all this flowery, verbose narration. And I think that's part of Alan Moore's problem at times, is just sort of inserting himself into the narrative too much, or when it doesn't call for it. Okay, now to the sort of social commentary aspect of this video here. So he's got sort of 3 stories here, all with sort of different social themes. You got sort of nuclear catastrophe and environmentalism. You've got sort of the horrors of slavery and racism in the back here. 2 of these stories I think are very well done. They're very nuanced. They don't get in the way of the story. One of them is not. The Curse, I did not like this story. I found it very heavy-handed, which I'll get to in a minute. Like, I don't know if it's the subject matter. Maybe Alan Moore, being a white guy from England, maybe he, maybe that's why he sort of went with a lighter touch on a story about American slavery. But this story, The Curse, was just, I found it's not so much that the message that he's trying to get across is necessarily untrue, or that it's not worth exploring. It's that he just needed to fucking step back a little bit and just he just gets a little out of hand here. So it's about a sort of a suburban white woman, and she's menstruating. It sort of has there's some parallel imagery with the Native Americans and the sort of red tent where they would send their women where they were menstruating. And then she's sort of buying feminine products, and talks about how the cashier, they're putting the maxi pads or whatever in a separate bag because it's so shameful. And it's just it's all this sort of, it sort of reads like for one, to put it in layman's terms, a sort of fedora-tipping atheist, and 2, just sort of this shrill, histrionic mythologizing about the repression of suburban women. And it's got this constant refrain of their anger and darkness turning unreleased, unspoken. I forgot to mention that she's a werewolf, okay? The conceit is that she's repressed, she's dissatisfied, but secretly she's a werewolf. Okay, so you got this guy, he's like, sure, but no more cookies for Joni here. She's still trying to get her figure back after the kid. Typical male chauvinist. You got this other line here Where is it? Did my bookmarks fail me? Oh, there. I did not remember to mark this. Okay, so she's walking by a bridal store, and it says here, smug and mocking, the images of her slavery rise up around her like nagging ghosts, secure in her victory. So on the one hand, you've got a story about real slavery. It features a black man who is tied up to a post and his skin is flayed off because he's been canoodling with the slave master's wife, with a white woman. And so you've got these depictions of real slavery and real, a man being flayed for the color of his skin. And then you've got this reference to slavery where a bridal dress, that's slavery. And it's just like, what if some dames are just content as in a domestic life, as domestic housewives? What if some dames aren't secretly bloodthirsty werewolves? It's all this very sort of affirmational type, like, hey ladies, you're all secretly ferocious beasts. You're ferocious. You're repressed, but you're actually ferocious beasts. And why don't you put aside your boring life of domesticality and join me, Alan Moore, in my blood magic sex cult? Why don't you join me, Alan Moore, in some sort of three-way? And that's how you're really liberated, gals. You're all ferocious beasts, and I just care so much about you as ferocious beasts. But why don't you come into my sex cult? Is kind of the vibe that I get from this story. Just sort of affirmational, liberal mythologizing. It's just, I don't know. It's. I think a good social commentary will sort of let the reader decide how outraged they should be. Like, the story itself is fine with just a bit of a lighter touch. You read it and you're like, yeah, man, that's kind of true. Damn, that's kind of true. I should think about that. But when you sort of put your finger on the scale too much, like he's doing here, I think, in my opinion, it sort of just gets in the way of things, and you're sort of more telling people how to feel than just sort of letting them sort it out for themselves. Okay. Gosh. I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm very thirsty. I'm getting a sore throat from talking in this video. Okay. Goodbye.